tuned for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerf Herder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Christina Yojimbo Henry. You can continue. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
Time for the Great Pumpkin. That's what it is.
Yes, I see the Great Pumpkin on your shirt, by the way.
Mm-hmm. It says
Nice.
Great Pumpkin Believer.
Ooh. Is that like a whole cult? You and Linus?
That's right.
A cult of two, yes.
A
I
cult
am-
of two.
I am-
You can't be alone.
Yes, I will
Yeah.
sit in the most sincere pumpkin patch.
You almost got Sally, but then you got away.
He is the only one who probably would sway. Although I think that we're all with Charlie Brown this year and that we're just getting nothing but rocks.
We've been getting rocks since
Yeah,
I think,
no.
March.
Well, it keeps on coming. It keeps on giving because we got some news and it's not all good. How many
wait,
zombies?
Can
One zombie.
Can we mention actually that today is Jeff's birthday?
It is.
Happy birthday,
Thank
Jeff.
you.
So we are
really
recording.
old.
He has given his precious time to spend with us the day of his birth.
Listen, you know what? After a certain point, birthdays are just birthdays. Although my father already told me, he says, don't expect a card. I'm not going to a store. I'm like, I get it, Dad. Listen, I don't, once I hit 16, my grandfather every year always sent a card and I would get a $20 bill. And then that one year where the bill didn't
It
come.
stopped.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was like after 16. I also had my great grandmother used to send me birthday cards, and she'd always address them to Master Jeffrey Chandler, and I loved that. I want a title. I guess I
Yeah.
can't be a master anymore.
That's for when you're like a young
Yeah.
boy.
I know, but as
Yeah.
a kid, I thought that was like extra special.
That's what's funny is that remember the Chuck Jones special of Cricket in Times Square?
Yeah.
Mhm.
My son was obsessed with this. As any one of his obsessions goes, it lasts for 6 months and then he's done with it. He's wrung it to dry and
That's any
he's tossed
kid,
it
yeah.
aside. So I went on eBay to see if I could find any merchandise to do with it because his birthday was rolling around. And there was a big picture book from 75, 76, whenever the thing aired. And so I ordered it. It was maybe $10, $15. So I ordered it and it came. It's a pretty good condition. For a time, we were reading it to him at bedtime. And there was a written message on the inside cover from obviously grandparents to whomever who had originally
Oh,
purchased
geez.
this for their
Aw.
grandchild.
See,
And
I don't
it
get
was
rid of those
and it was in
books.
very elaborate cursive
Old school
writing.
cursive. Yeah.
To Master Jonathan, blah, 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 on the event of his 6th birth. And I would read that just like that, very haughty language.
So some kid is now like lamenting the fact that he had this as he's probably frantically searching eBay every day.
He probably is the one that put it on eBay.
Probably.
I saved a lot of books. The Star Wars storybook, the
Mhm.
picture book.
Yep.
Mhm.
And I have one that Jim would probably love. It was a Haunted Mansion storybook from Disney. It's a little hardcover. I'll show it to you after.
All right. Well, that's actually a nice segue because our first news article is about Disney. Walt Disney Company's chairman of Parks, Experiences, and Products, which is Josh D'Amaro. They announced that they are laying off 28,000 employees.
Yeah.
Cast members across all the parks, and this includes 400 plus Disney Park Imagineers. This is really hitting.
And they had all these renovation and new attraction plans going for Florida alone. And I wonder how that's going to affect all of that.
I would think that, yeah, by and large, that's going to probably come to a screeching halt, if not. Actually, one of my confessional ideas was if you were Imagineer to come up with a ride or an attraction for Disney. But now we can't do it because these people are all out of work, so we can't be
Right.
taking their jobs.
And I
yet.
wonder how much of this is California and how much is Florida, because California has not allowed Disneyland to open since the start
Yeah.
of this, but
I know-
Florida has.
I think I read an article about this, and I think most of it is actually in California because they can't I mean, they've had people furloughed and,
Yeah, correct.
they've
Right.
been, but they have no potential start date for when people might be able to work again. And there's just been, nothing from the state of California saying like you might be able to open if like the metrics reached X or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I get it. I understand they can't like pay people indefinitely if the park isn't
Yeah, you figure
open,
6 months at this point.
but it just,
And even if they opened, I mean, us as New Yorkers, you can't go to California unless you're going to quarantine
right.
before or after
Right.
the fact. So when are you going to have time to go to Disney? You're not. So unfortunately, we're going to stay on this downbeat news, which is MGM Universal has officially announced that James Bond, No Time to Die, is being backed up till April of next year. And Cinemark, owner of Regal Cinemas, immediately said every theater in the UK and the US is closing.
Yes. Now, the news that this movie is backed up is no surprise because
No, we
it's
saw
the
it coming.
latest
There
in
was
a
only
long
two.
list.
Right. So we now only have, Wonder Woman, which is still slated for December.
Hmm.
But this movie was a big deal for theaters, as you.
Well, so was Tenet,
Yeah.
and so was Mulan. And this was it. This was it. They just said, we can't hold out any longer. So even the theaters in the States that are slowly reopening, and I've seen people on my Facebook, they're going, it's the 40th anniversary of Empire Strikes Back. This seems to be the big draw. People are going back to the theaters specifically to watch this. All those theaters, even the ones that just started reopening, are all getting shut down. You're talking like 7,000 plus theaters.
I just talked about this last week, right? If there's no new films for these theaters to show, it is not feasible for them to stay open.
Right.
And
it's costing them money.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
What status are they going to be in come December and 2021 when these movies start releasing?
My
Where are
guess
they going to
is-
release?
Right, because there could very well be a large glut of theaters that are officially permanently closed and not reopen. So now all of a sudden, theaters are like, studios are like, here's our movie, and you're just going to get crickets because there ain't nobody to open it. It's scary. It's really a bummer. I was talking with my wife with it last night, and she's like, you're going to cry. And I'm like, I am. I'm about to cry because this is, we've talked about, this is the heart and soul of this show.
Mhm.
Is the theater going experience. This is my happy place. This is why we do this. And it's being taken away from us. So, but anyways, we're going to move on. We're going to stay with Disney though, but on a positive note, Disney Plus has officially announced their lead character for Ms. Marvel. They actually have cast Iman Vellani. And I don't know if you guys are familiar. This is a newer version of the character. I think she was brought out in 2014, and she will be Disney's first Muslim character, superhero.
Awesome.
Is this a TV show?
This is Disney Plus, but Kevin Feige has gone on record as saying this, that she will be featured in the Marvel films. And if anyone knows, either this week or last week, they just dropped the new Avengers video game. And she is large in this video, even in the promos. So they're fast forwarding this character and bringing her in. So the character's name is, and some people are already jumping on this. The character's name is Kamala Khan. So of course you already got this right wing, left wing. They're just capitalizing on Kamala Harris. And I'm like, well, I think
what
the
an
character,
ignorant thing to say.
right? It's like, oh, what? Yeah. So, but the actress is a Pakistani American, and she's a teenager. And beyond that, I don't know anything more about this character.
Oh, we'll find out.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. No, and I'm excited for them to already be like, not only is this character, because we've talked about the She-Hulk and some of this other stuff, but for Feige to come out and be like, oh yeah, this character is going to translate, it's going to go from the television series into the movies. So you're now going to start seeing that melding. And I think we're going to see more of that with WandaVision, especially with Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Mm-hmm.
And on that note, Jamie Foxx, who played Electro in the Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, is showing up in the new Spider-Man Tom Holland.
Now, I saw something last night where it was leaked that they are in talks with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield to be in the same movie. It makes
perfect sense because think about the fact, so the last Spider-Man, Homecoming, no, it was Far From Home. At the end, we see J. Jonah Jameson and it is J.K. Simmons who played the character in the Maguire Spider-Man series.
But it's not the same J. Jonah.
But you're now seeing Electro from the second series coming in. So how much of this multiverse, Spider-Man into the multiverse, you got Doctor Strange into the multiverse of madness. So they could be picking and choosing some of these characters from these other, you could get an Ed Norton Hulk. Who knows? So I find that really interesting. Jamie Foxx did go onto his Instagram page and he wrote, super excited to be a part of the new Marvel Spider-Man. And I won't be blue in this one, but 1,000% badass. And then he later deleted it.
Okay.
Because I'm sure probably someone Disney said, dude, there's an NDA involved in this. Keep your mouth shut.
But it's interesting that DC and Marvel are going down the same road of this multiverse, especially if that's more than just a rumor, if they are going to bring Garfield and Tobey Maguire and with Tom Holland into the new Spider-Man movie.
Well, I mean,
DC's been doing it already on the TV shows.
On the TV show.
The Crisis at Infinite Earths.
Right. So for once, DC is taking the lead.
Yeah, but can they pull it off successfully? It still looks like a mess. Sorry, DC.
They just don't have one strong guiding force.
You don't have a Feige. You don't have a Feige who is instrumental, even behind the scenes. It doesn't matter who the director is or what who's writing it. There's an overall arching connective tissue, and that is Feige. And you're gonna okay. So and my last news item. This is for you, Christina.
Yeah.
Akira Kurosawa.
Yes.
We were this was announced a couple years ago, but it's officially in the works now. HBO Max is going to be producing a TV series based on Rashomon.
Okay.
It is teaming with Amblin Television, and they're going to develop a series inspired by the psychological thriller. We have two guys, Billy Ray and Virgil Williams. I am not familiar with their work. But here's the description.
They don't sound Japanese, I'll tell you that much.
Here's the caveat, which is the HBO Max offering will not be a direct adaptation. Rashomon will center on a grisly sexual assault and murder and the unraveling mystery as seen through multiple characters' competing narratives.
That's what happens in Rashomon.
Correct, but this sounds like each episode is going to be devoted to one person's perspective. Yes, correct. Right. The plot device, which was pretty game changing at the time, right? I mean, it was pretty.
Oh, well, I mean, but of course.
Because this was like 50s, right? Not Russia.
Yes.
Okay.
Of course, because, and it's based on a text. So there was something before that, but of course, Kurosawa, so he made it his own.
Right.
And at the time, like it sounds like the emphasis in this is going to be on the grisliness. Yes, there's a sexual assault and a murder in Rashomon, but obviously that's not the focus per se. The focus is on the almost like the mutability of memory, like the way people remember things. Why do people tell certain types of stories? Because one of the funny things about Rashomon is that all the characters come forward and claim to have committed the murder.
That's what drives me nuts about every freaking episode of CSI. It's like, come on, if you didn't do this, don't sass back the investigators.
But at the end of Rashomon, you're not necessarily supposed to have answers. That's not the point of the film. The point of the film is not to have an answer.
See, my fear is that as a television show, people are going to want answers.
Right. And I think probably people will start speculating, but it also sounds like it might be very Americanized and it'll be much less philosophical.
Maybe they'll go the Clue route and there's like multiple endings where each character is guilty, depending on what day you watch it. Who knows? I thought it was interesting, and I knew that you would at least have
I feel like Toshiro Mifune will not be in this, so I guess I'm just going to have to go watch Rashomon again.
Do any of us here have HBO Max yet?
I do not. I canceled my HBO, and I'm not paying for another streaming service.
Neither do I.
I can't do it. It's too much. I do have one more news item, and this is disturbing, and I'm going to put it in the WTF category. Rick Moranis.
Yes.
Have we heard this story?
Yes.
Sucker punched
a random
some piece of crap The guy's 67 years old. He's out walking in New York City, minding his own business, and this punk just comes up and punches him. Listen, I get it if you didn't like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but come on. He's an American institution, even though I think he's Canadian.
He is Canadian.
Yes, he is Canadian.
He's a Canadian icon.
And obviously, he's an older guy, so unable
Like I said,
to defend
67.
himself.
He's tiny. He's not like some...
I know.
And I don't think robbery or anything was involved. Right?
No. To me, it just sounds like a random attack. It's not like you're purposely going after the guy. It just, circumstances or whatever that it was him. And this probably happens all day, every day in New York City, especially lately. And we just don't hear about it. And this guy's...
But thankfully, I hear he's doing well from what I saw in the news reports. So.
Yeah, well, Ryan Reynolds just got him out of retirement, and now he's going right back in. He's like, you know what? You people don't deserve me. That is all of my news. Not all good news, but news nonetheless.
So as we alluded to at the beginning, we are in October.
Ooh.
We are in a happy place of sorts for a few of us.
A few of us. You might have dragged me.
Continue this. We don't
dragging me along here.
We don't need to sequester it to October. So we've decided that we're going to continue.
Oh, we're just going to
streak into November. So we're going to do scary.
And maybe December and January because we got nothing else to talk about.
We're going to convert Jeff by the time this is over. Jeff's going to be like, yeah, I can watch horror movies. No big deal.
See,
the training wheels are coming off the bike.
Here's the thing, which I do not consider either one of these to be horror.
Well, I mean, I think it's just...
I'm not a fan of the jump scare.
Well,
I don't like the talking dolls. I don't like I know it's coming. But let's get into #Alive because I'm assuming that's what we're going to talk about first, being the newer flick.
These are both zombie-related features.
Well, you brokered the question last week, which is it zombies or are they infected? And to me, as a newbie, I don't give a shit.
It's interchangeable.
No difference, but
to most people,
there is a
interchangeable. But there
is a difference, and these people are not necessarily zombies. They are infected. If #Alive, can we call it alive? Do I have to keep saying hashtag?
You can just say alive.
That movie on Netflix.
If Alive was a zombie movie, I would throw my hands in the air or throw something at the TV.
Because you don't like the fast zombies?
I can't abide fast-running zombies.
Now, where did the fast zombies come from?
It slaps you in the face, the zombie aficionado.
Where did the fast zombies originate?
Because
the George A. Romero have been the slow, lumbering, drag my feet, arms in the air, brains. And
I hate blaming the guy, but I have to say Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, I think, was
we can blame everything on Zack Snyder.
Well, the interesting thing,
problem.
I was thinking about this. First of all, I want to back up slightly because I think that for the purposes of metaphor, infected and zombies function the same way in movies.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's why people do think that they're interchangeable, but I understand the distinction that you make between people who are infected with a disease that makes them, out of control.
Crazy.
Right.
Versus something like, the Night of the Living Dead where they're clearly corpses that have risen.
Be reanimated.
Right. And that are being reanimated. But I was thinking about this when I was watching Alive. The first time I remember seeing what we might call a fast zombie, the infected, was in 28 Days Later, which came out in 2002.
Which we reviewed, and I do remember enjoying that.
And but they're clearly defined as infected in that film.
Right.
But then 2 years later came Zack Snyder's remake of Dawn of the Dead, and it was clear that he had been influenced by 28 Days Later.
Right. And a lot of the reviews, and this really stuck in my craw, even at the time, years before Dawn of the Dead, that it was referred in many reviews as a zombie movie, which is, obviously not the case. And I'm talking about the Danny Boyle 28 Days Later. Yes, he is extremely influenced by Romero and zombie movies. The whole conceit of the infected, as you're saying, they're human beings that are enraged by this.
In 28 Days Later, they say they're infected with rage, and they say
with rage.
Similar
that's it.
in Alive, that that they're infected with like something that makes them aggressive, and
They talk about some kind of a spore.
Highly communicable. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, you can get it.
You never quite get. I mean, this movie starts. I mean, it doesn't give you much breathing room before it just goes right into it.
And while in 28 Days Later, they're not strictly cannibalistic, they do kind of engulf you when they attack you and they vomit on you and whatever.
Right.
So if you're bitten by one of these things, because they're infected with rage, they're going to bite you, they're going to hit you, they're going to punch you, whatever they can do, you will turn. So in that respect, the infected and zombie, there's the line between them is very blurred. In terms of the nuts and bolts. The main difference is the infected can run. They have all their human strength and capabilities, like accentuated by their madness.
Right.
And you don't necessarily have to shoot them in the head to kill them. You can shoot them anywhere to kill them, even though that wasn't happening. At the end of this movie, they're being mowed down by machine guns, yet they're all still getting back up again. So,
A flesh wound. Just a flesh wound.
And in Alive, they sort of very quickly say that these people are, not only are they infected with these aggressive tendencies, there's like very specific traits that come with it. They bleed from their eyes, and they have cannibalistic tendencies. So that line between the infected and the zombie becomes even more blurred when
they're getting as close as they can to calling it zombies without actually calling it zombies.
Right.
And the bleeding from the eyes, of course, that's a nice visual. So how can you leave that alone?
Yes. Although we were laughing about this because on Netflix, they have the rating, right? And it has in the corner, it says TVMA for language and smoking.
And smoking.
Yeah, smoking. Right.
And then later you see a guy eating someone's intestine. You see another guy who's lost his eyes entirely, right? His face is completely mutilated. I'm like, so it's MA for language and smoking.
Yeah, and I don't remember who was smoking. I don't even remember that.
It was the guy who they take.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
He puts his cigarette out in the spam container.
That's right, because there's basically 3 characters in this whole movie.
So we have Alive. This is a setup we have seen many, many, many times before. The only new thing that comes with this is the social media aspect, and that's so played down until the end. It kind of the throat gets thrown in because you're introduced to this character of Junwoo, who is a gamer. He wakes up and his bedroom is filled with tech. He's got his 2 monitors by his bed. He's got like an Alexa. He's got a phone. So and he's wakes
probably
up,
got a Twitch account.
And he's in an apartment building. His parents have gone to work or wherever. I think it was they left for work.
Went on a trip. Yeah,
they were gone with the
so they leave him a note saying, and this
go
is
get groceries.
Foreshadowing, go get groceries. There's no food.
He wouldn't have had time. It doesn't matter. He would
I know. He would have been dead. He would have been dead if he went out to get groceries.
Yeah.
But so it's established that he is a gamer and that he's into tech. Then all hell breaks loose almost immediately after he wakes up. He turns on the TV because somebody that he's playing a game with tells him, or he gets a text, look at the TV. Is this for real? He turns it on, and almost straight out of Night of the Living Dead, a broadcast saying, there's assailants all over the place. Stay indoors. And he looks out the window, and everybody's running, very much a la 28 Days Later. So that is the setup. For most of the rest of the movie, he is caught in his apartment while this is all going on around him, and seemingly he's the last one alive, at least in his sphere, in his area.
And he's not like totally dumb, although the other character later makes fun of him for being an idiot.
Well, he's constantly smacking himself in his head that he is, but he's obviously beyond teenage years, but he still lives with his parents. Obviously, he's making a living, playing video games or whatever. But you can't help this. He's adorable. He is. You cannot help. And the one thing we didn't talk about, this is a Japanese movie.
It's Korean
because it's in Seoul. It takes place in Seoul.
Okay.
Right?
So it's a Korean movie. It is subtitled in certain parts when you see it, but it's dubbed. But I think I
watched it in Korean.
Well, yeah.
Is it dubbed?
Kudos to you.
I watched it in Korean with subtitles.
Yeah, me too.
No, the only subtitles I got was whenever there was anything written, like his note, or when there was something on the television. I never changed any settings. Matter of fact, I was kind of like, oh, here we go. But it's dubbed, and I thought it was actually very well done, dubbed.
See, that's interesting. So now I feel like we've had two different experiences.
Yes.
Yeah, because I watched it in Korean with
No,
subtitles.
I didn't even.
Maybe
it didn't
maybe
come
there is
up,
a
it
setting
just-
that you don't know about. Maybe it's just been playing.
Maybe
There
for
is
all
a
I know, I
setting.
have something just turned off.
You can change the language and the subtitles on almost
Right.
anything on Netflix. Like I have an Apple TV, so it's just like a swipe down. You can see
Right.
the subtitles, like, and the audio tracks
Huh,
at the
okay.
top. And I watch a lot of stuff, obviously, in
Right,
its
correct.
original language. So mine is set to just automatically go to the original language track and the
Okay.
subtitles. So,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
mine was dubbed, so interesting. Well, it's good that there's options.
But I was going to say, he's not like totally dumb because he realizes from the start, like, he's going to be stuck in the apartment. He starts rationing food from the beginning. Like, you
Yeah,
see him like
correct.
lay out what he has,
Yeah.
which is not a lot. And he sort
Yeah.
of like says, okay, like,
Subdividing it. and-
right, like, I'll eat this, I'll eat this, I'll eat this. He has the one cup of ramen that says Last Supper on it.
Which then he eats because he sees a commercial where the guy's slurping down the udon. He's like, oh man.
And nothing is left for the viewer to figure out themselves, because he actually calls back that note at one point. I should have gone to get groceries, that like she
Yeah,
told me to
exactly.
at the beginning of the
Yeah.
movie.
It's kind of nice though, because there's nothing that this movie puts down that it doesn't pick up again by the end. So like, there's one scene where you see Juno looking out the window, and there's a police officer trying to fend off a group.
And that
And
was a
she's-
rough scene. That was,
And he wants to do something and he can't. Obviously, he's like
Yeah.
several floors up. He can't do anything for her. And he tries to distract them by yelling, but
Yeah,
he still
good.
doesn't
Nice
save
move,
her. But she's got a gun. And
Yep.
he sees her load the gun, and he sees her drop it on the ground. And like, they come back, and that gun comes back again by the end of the movie, right?
Yeah, yes, correct.
So like, there's nothing that this movie, it's sort of nice because they don't violate Chekhov's rules, right? Whatever they show you, it comes into
Plays
play
back,
again
yeah.
by the end of the movie.
And that even is maybe not, it wasn't quite as long, but later when he befriends a girl in the other apartment, and she tries to tether them with the baseball.
Yep.
And now the baseball is laying on the floor with a rope, and I'm like, you got to pull that thing in. And of course, sure enough, it comes back to haunt her.
Right, because again, they put something down and they make sure they pick it up again, because they say on the news, the infected remember behaviors from their life and may actually try to carry out their jobs, their professions, right? So the person who's trying to climb is actually a firefighter.
A fireman, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like, you see everything come back. They don't really waste any information that they give you.
No,
Which is nice.
and you know, Jim talked about the technology, but at one point, you know, he's not getting a phone signal. He's trying to contact his parents, so he uses the drone.
Yep.
To fly above to be able to get a phone signal. And I thought that was really nice, and that comes back into play later as well. You're only getting bits and pieces from the news, which is what he's getting. You're not getting any more outside information. Everything that you see, it's like Rear Window. It's just from his point of view. And this kid's like, I wouldn't last more than an hour in an outbreak like this. Like, I would just feel like I'm dead, you know?
This is just like Night of the Living Dead. So again, this is really liberally taking from what we've seen before. And the only new things, like, that EMT turned infected, climbing up, I love that scene. That was incredible.
I found myself holding my breath quite a lot throughout this movie. And again, the soundtrack is rocking. There's some really nice camera work going on in certain scenes, especially because you're in a closed environment. You're only in his little apartment. The one thing I didn't get was that early on, he boards up his windows, not with anything substantial except for newspapers. And I'm like, there's no reason to do that other than because it makes for a nice graphic in the background.
Well, because they can't see his movie.
Right. Yeah, then they can't see him.
But he's what is he, like on the 6th, 7th floor?
But still, he's got zombies like above him and below him, and one of them can climb up the balcony.
Well, we do know that now, yeah.
But you know what was throwing me was the setup of this apartment building, because obviously from the beginning you can tell he's many floors up above the ground. Yet there is the first time you see a backward shot behind him towards his kitchen, you see somebody move past the window. I'm like, what?
Yeah, and then
What is he on the ground level or not? Then you realize he's got a window facing out into the hallway.
And so does the girl, which they don't take to the extent of he'll block the door with the refrigerator, but you have a window that's exposed.
But when you're in the outside shot on that walkway, you can see that the windows have
like shutters,
bars over them.
Yeah.
So I think the window is just not as much of a threat. But clearly they're strong enough to get through the door, because even though he has the refrigerator in front of the door, one of them actually breaks in.
Yeah.
And like knocks over the door and gets through.
Early on, as soon as this starts to unfold, his neighbor comes rushing into the apartment.
Yeah.
And, he's like, dude, you got to go. You got to go. And he's like, no, just let me use your restroom. And then, of course, he comes out and he is infected or whatever. And you see this guy out in the hallway once or twice, because he does leave the apartment, which I'm like, dude, come on. That was like really intense. I talk about these Marvel movies where you have these hallway fights, and this is just to the nth degree where he's just battling off all these infected people. But he ends up stealing the guy's keys, going into his apartment looking for food, which was genius.
And he says he's farming, which is a gaming term for collecting resources in a game.
Oh, gotcha.
And the way they shoot a lot of these scenes, even in the hallway, it's almost like a first-person shooter game.
Yeah.
And
very Doom-like, yeah.
Now that you say that, there's one scene where he gets pissed after he knows what's going on, that he can't play his game anymore. And I'm watching this, I'm like, you damn millennials. You're in the middle of a zombie outbreak.
and he's pissed.
You can't play Doom, right? Yeah. And what's funny is that you mentioned the rationing. And how he, right from the get-go, he knows his situation and he's got to ration his food. And he's drinking liquor, I think, from his parents' liquor cabinet. And at one point, I'm thinking, is he drinking his own pee? Because he had because that would make sense, right? If you don't have anything to drink. And the fact, this guy must have the lightest beard in existence, because he's in that apartment for 20 days and he's never, I don't think he's touching up his roots either. His hair's not growing an iota during that 20 days either.
Oh man. And we do get that very disturbing. He has a dream where the parents come home.
Yeah.
And it's not real, and it's heartbreaking. But then he does end up getting more messages. He's able to use his selfie stick to bring up the and that was, again, he's watching social media and he's watching people try to do this, and one guy falls to his death, but he's at the point where he needs to try and get phone signal again, and he gets the messages from his parents, and then he realizes that they're
that's what was throwing me. I didn't realize where they had gone, because it sounded like from those messages they had made it to his father's work
office. Yes, that's what but then you hear them again be kind of overrun, but that's them at the foot of the apartment. That's when he realizes that they're dead, they're gone, because you said that they retain memories or whatever, so they're trying to come back home, and he loses his mind, as probably most people would. This is where he tries to he's like, I'm done. This is like day 15 or something.
This is where we get introduced to the girl across the way. Because
he's literally hanging by a cord around his neck, and all of a sudden you see a laser beam light, and he realizes that there's somebody
Here I'm thinking that somebody's going to start shooting at
him. Sniper, right? Yeah. You're going to go full on Night of the Living Dead and just shoot the living as well.
But it's a very powerful laser pointer. Apparently, that's what this is.
Yeah, well, she's smart enough that she's pointing out signs on his wall,
right,
to say "hello, moron."
She's been watching
him. Correct.
She is completely aware of his existence.
Yep.
And while hiding her own.
So we do get introduced to his second character, which is this is really nice.
But again, this was taken out of of all things, the Zack Snyder Dawn of the Dead. There's a relationship from Ving Rhames' character on the top of the mall and the guy that's a block away on the top of his building, and they're trading messages back and forth.
See, not being initiated like that, not being as familiar with some of these other movies, like I thought it was nice. The second act now, because it's strictly been his point of view. Now all of a sudden you're introduced to another character, and he does go into the neighbor's apartment. They contact each other to communicate. At one point she says 7:00, and of course he wakes up at like noon. and completely blows it, you know, and she's like pointing at her watch, like, come on, dummy. You know, he's like smacking himself in the head. I'm so stupid. I'm so stupid.
But it's the nice thing, even when it's using familiar elements. The actor Yu Ain, he's so sympathetic. He's
Like I
such,
said, I hate to use the word adorable, but
He
he is
is.
just absolutely adorable.
He is. He's like
and
a
I'm
big
man
kid.
enough to say that. He is just like, you
But no.
want to see this kid survive.
But in a way, like he's adorable, like a kid. You know, like he's
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
he's like a
just,
grown 12-year-old.
Yeah,
Mhm.
no, there's a reason he's probably still living in mommy and daddy's house.
but he's such a sympathetic character that even when you know sort of what's expected of this type of movie, or even when you see familiar elements, you get so emotionally invested in the character. And then when you get to know you being a little bit better, you discover like she too tried to kill herself, and
Yeah.
you know, like
Yeah.
there's the broken noose on her ceiling.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
And
And she's got all these great booby traps. She's obviously well more prepared than he is.
right. But then he goes next door and
Yeah.
finds the mountaineering equipment and gets the walkies, which is nice.
Once he leaves that apartment, now it's like there's no protection around you whatsoever. It's like, dude, what are you doing?
And there's no way that he can get down from leaving out his front door, getting down into the lower levels of the apartment building.
No,
because
and
this hallway is overrun.
They lose power. You know, you do get shots of helicopters and planes going over and things are blowing up, and then the whole grid goes down. So he now has no power. So this is my one issue, which was his phone continues to be charged.
Well,
and when they get to the other building, they're able to use the elevator.
Does the power go
Yes.
out on their side of the river, though?
It looks like
Because
everything
it
went
looks
out.
like the power went
I
out on
don't
the
think
other
he
side of
ever-
the river.
He I don't think he ever lost power.
Yeah,
No?
you can see the transformers blowing on the other side of the river,
well,
but like
they
on
were
their side it
showing
looks still lit.
Okay. All
It
right.
was
Maybe I just
there was no
misunderstood.
doubt that he lost water pressure.
Right, because they get in the elevator at one point.
Yeah,
And the
I
elevator
actually put in there, how the hell
malfunctions.
does the elevator work and how is he keeping his phone charged? But if you're telling me he never really lost power, then
Yeah, it looked
Although
like
she
it was,
did, you know, she had the rappel ropes and all that other stuff, and she had the mountain climbing gear because she was curled up in the jacket and the sleeping bag. But she did make a point of saying that she was afraid of heights.
yeah.
So I'm like, oh, here we go. She's going to have to rappel across, or she's going to have to climb. But that didn't happen. She actually, in order to get to him, she rappels down to the ground and just becomes badass.
They realize that they have to leave their apartments somehow to get to each other.
Yeah.
And she goes and she rappels down, and she's on the street. And the plan was that they were both going to go down, or he was going to create a diversion. And she's on her own for the longest time. You're like, where the hell is he? You know, where?
Yeah. He was a little reluctant, but he showed up.
Well, no, it was that she went before he was ready. And then
Yeah.
he's like watching in awe, and he's like, who
No,
is
I
she?
think we're all watching in awe because we're like, look, she's badass,
But
man.
there are
Look at her
so
go.
many times in this, so many times when she is engulfed, and you're thinking there's no way that she
Well,
would have
that's it.
survived.
Right. Even
Yeah.
when the one breaks into his apartment and, you know, he's scrambling to get this thing out. And they even said on the news that, you know, it's transmitted through blood. It's like, this guy's got, you know, this is like the Walking Dead conundrum. Which is
where
these guys have
every
gotta,
week
there's
they
got
all
to be
have
a scratch or a
their
cut.
open wounds on them
Correct.
everywhere, you know.
Right.
and they're-
There's broken glass all over the place. You can't tell me that he didn't somehow, nick himself and that disinfected blood has gotten into him. But whatever, you go with it. And we bring up that scene where, you know, back to the fireman, the EMT rescue, and he's climbing, he's using the rope that she had thrown down and just arbitrarily decided not to bring it back up, knocks her unconscious because it was tied to the table. So the table comes flying. So she's in her apartment unconscious. He's watching this thing climb floor by floor, and he's trying to use the drone to fend it off.
It was King Kong with the
with
this infected on the Empire State Building swatting
That's
at
great.
this drone.
That's a great analogy. Yeah.
And if this movie is remembered for anything, it should be that scene. Is that the zombie climbing up and attacking the drone, and then he finally gets it. So they find each other, and she keeps telling him, or she keeps talking to herself, that there's no one on the 8th floor of his building.
Yeah, because she's been absolutely like scouting out. Are you sure?
And there's
Are
no
you sure?
movement. There's no
Yep.
movement on the 8th floor, which isn't entirely true because they get there and they do encounter some infected on the 8th floor.
Yeah.
They're attacked in the hallway, and somebody saves them. Comes out
Yep.
of his apartment on the 8th floor,
Smoke bombs or whatever, and he's
brings them back in. and you think, oh, they're safe. Then that there's a third survivor, and he's crying. Jun-Woo's crying because the guy tells him, "Haven't you heard the news? There's a rescue team. There's a rescue team."
Yeah.
And I don't know if he's lying or after you see the end of the movie, he could be telling him the truth because a rescue team does come.
Right, because they say at the end, like, that they're tracking people down by their social media posts. And he had made a post early on with his address on it and his name, you know, and saying, like, hashtag I will survive, right?
So, again, I mean, this could be a whole franchise where you just see these different people dealing with this at the same time. So this third act where you bring in this other character.
But yeah, this gets into like Walking Dead territory. This was like the governor from Walking Dead.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Made me think of 28 Days Later, when that scene when they go to and they meet up with the soldiers and Christopher Eccleston says, "I promised them women." Yeah. Right. So that like the signal that they were sending, saying that you know.
Yeah,
right. He was going to help people. It was just a way to like lure women there.
But in this case, he promised his wife lunch, I guess.
Right.
This is where it kind of started to crumble for me.
Well,
but maybe because up to this point you're optimistic that these two are actually going to make it out. And again, it just proves to you that it's not the zombies or the infected people you have to worry about. It's the humans who are pieces of crap.
Right. Although the infected, they're pretty worrisome as well.
No, I know, but you know where they stand. Yeah. You know where they stand. They want to eat you. They want to disembowel you. This guy, lured them in. He's giving them spam. He's giving them water. And they were very reluctant to trust him at first. And then he drinks the water.
No, she was reluctant to trust him.
Well, I think
he was all in. He's like, I'll drink this.
Passes out and you realize that the guy drugged him. And as Jim mentioned, it's all because he's just feeding his infected wife, he's got tethered inside the bathroom.
Well, it's tethered inside the baby's room. So I had a moment when I saw like the baby formula and the wipes. I was like, oh my God, there's a baby in there. And I was.
So I got the impression it wasn't even his apartment though.
Because, no, I don't think it was.
He had just broke in, and he had quite a lot of food. But again, the gun comes into play, like you said. The gun, there it is. And at one point, when they're both on the ground, she does grab it. I don't know if you want to count how many bullets were actually fired, but.
Well, what it does is it gets to the heart of the thing that's always disturbing about zombie/infected movies, which is that, can you trust other humans in a time of crisis?
Oh,
that's and I think it's very disturbing to think that, when there's such an apocalyptic situation and there's like terror all around, that people will do things out of completely selfish motivation. Like obviously this guy just couldn't let his wife go emotionally.
Right.
Even though she was infected, she was not his wife anymore. He just couldn't let her go.
And that's what Jim said with the Walking Dead. If anybody watches that, the governor, it was his daughter. Mm-hmm. It was the same thing. He couldn't accept the fact that she was no longer the person that he wanted her to be.
And this renders these characters, as insane as the infected. They're no help to the protagonists of our story.
No.
They get past this crazy guy on the 8th floor.
But not before they shoot him. And it's like, come on, it's the worst thing you could possibly do in a zombie movie is make noise.
But this is the thing, is that these zombies, they can apparently, if they hear a noise, they can pinpoint it.
The one with no eyes couldn't smell him inches away, but somehow, could pinpoint what floor they were on and where that gunfire came from.
And when she's talking, before they actually get together and she's in her apartment building and she's talking on the walkie-talkie, she knocks over her little shelving unit.
Yep. Yeah.
And the zombie down the hall knows exactly what apartment that noise came from.
I recognize that.
But we get into the end of the movie once they get past that midsection with the guy on the 8th floor, and they are resigned to the fact that they are going to die at this point because they are convinced that the guy was nuts, that he lied to them about the rescue teams coming. They could be the only ones left alive on the planet.
Yeah, and they're ready to kill each other with the gun. Mm-hmm. And then they hear the helicopters. Yep. So now it's a mad dash to get to the roof. So a mad dash.
They're fighting off infected in the hallway to get to the roof of the building. They get up there, but the helicopters are already gone. So they're not even within sight anymore. So now you think they're done. There's no way that they can make it off this without jumping off the roof because the infected are coming at them.
Which is about what they were going to do.
Yep. And as if like you're at the end of Commando or at the end
Right,
of
yeah,
Predator.
it was a miraculous.
He even says at one point, doesn't he say "get to the chopper"? In
I don't know.
did
When he was
did
in the
they
hallway,
say
and he was
that?
blocking him off with the bike.
Did they
I think
say
he
that
just
in
said
the
something
dub?
like "get to
He
the
doesn't
roof."
actually say get to the
Yes, get to the
chopper, but
roof
he
or
says
something.
go up because you have to get the chopper. Yeah.
It did
Like,
sound-
But even in Korean, the word "chopper" was audible. What he
Oh,
was
yeah.
saying
Chopper,
when you
chopper.
read, yeah.
Mhm.
So, and this is what I was referring to before when they're at the edge of the roof and
Yeah.
the infected are running at them, and suddenly the helicopter comes rising up behind,
cinematically rises.
and
Yeah.
they've got a machine gun turret, and the soldier in the chopper just cuts the
Mows 'em
infected
down.
down. And this is
Yeah.
where, they're playing fast and loose with, are these infected or these zombies, because it's not killing them. They're just going down, getting back up, and then they're rescued. And it turns out that the message that he put out earlier on social media, he held up a sign of where he was, his
Right,
address,
his address, yeah.
apartment, that's how the government is finding survivors, that these people all over the city are leaving messages as to where they are, and the government is coming based on those messages and getting them. And this is the hashtag alive part of the title. This is where that comes into play, and how social media.
I thought that was nice, right? Because it went from hashtag I must survive to hashtag alive.
Right.
Yeah. Which we didn't even talk about. The opening graphics I thought were very well done.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that. I love this. I thought this was phenomenal. I really enjoyed this.
It was really good. I mean, like all three of us were enraptured, like watching it.
Yeah.
We didn't move for an hour and 38 minutes.
Yeah, like I said, I found myself holding my breath quite a few times. I did watch it during the daytime, though. I did not watch it at night. I just want to let you know. Baby steps, right? Baby steps.
I'm going to come in and do that. The problem is that I watched this, and then I watched another movie called One Cut of the Dead right afterwards, which is one of the best zombie movies I have ever seen. It's a Japanese zombie movie from a year ago, maybe. And it's, unfortunately, it's exclusively on Shudder, which I know neither of you get.
Right.
So I couldn't help but compare it to Alive. And Alive was just so derivative of all these other zombie movies that I so much love and revere, that I kind of had a grudge against it because of that.
Just fair. Like, again, I'm in part of the uninitiated. So
I didn't think it was bad. Any zombie movie is a good movie. I just didn't think it was great.
I really enjoyed it.
Yep, I did too.
Although when they're in the helicopter, I kept saying, kiss her, but he didn't.
But I think he is such a sympathetic character that it's...
She should have kissed him is what should have happened. Even if it was just on the cheek, I would have been okay with that. A little show of affection. They made it. Well, apparently my buckets are going to be much higher than Jim's, which is surprising since I don't really like these kind of movies, but I did like it. I'm going 4.
What?
Yeah,
4?
I really like this. Sorry. Well,
I am
sorry,
amazed.
not sorry.
I am
Would
amazed.
you rather that I hate it?
No.
And I loved it too, so I'm also going to say 4.
Okay.
And I watch a ton more zombie/affected movies than Jeff does. Maybe not quite as many as you, but I watch a lot, and I still liked this because I was attached to the character. That goes a long way for me. Like if
you're invested in...
If I'm invested in the character, then that goes a long way.
Because he really has to hold the movie. I mean, it is his story.
4 to me is that's like Night of the Living Dead, Day of the Dead territory.
Yeah, but see, I probably will like those less.
I wouldn't put this anywhere near the Romero movies.
See, but I would give Night of the Living Dead like a 4.5. I would go higher on Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, but still, this, if you're going to give it 4, then that's fine, because you guys love this. But I'm just, from my perspective, I'm like 28 Days Later, that's 4. That's that's a game changer in the zombie genre. Night of the Living Dead, The Grandfather, that's like 4 3/4 probably. Dawn of the Dead, 5. So this is, I think, for me, is much lower down on the hierarchy of zombie.
But that's fair. I mean, you're living in the world of... That's like someone not watching a Star Wars movie and then seeing, you know, one of the prequels would be like, this is phenomenal. I love it. It's like, yeah, but you haven't seen the other 8. It's like, I don't care. I love this one. I'm taking it out of context.
Right.
I don't have the history.
But
Right,
also,
yeah.
like, I would give Night of the Living Dead 4.5. I love 28 Days Later. That would be like a 4 3/4 or like a 5. You know, I liked Alive because it reminded me of all the things that I like about zombie movies. Like, and I was invested in the character, so I didn't see that as a negative.
But
I get it.
there's so
Yeah.
many zombie movies now that
That
it's
are-
almost like Die Hard to me. Okay, this is Die Hard on a boat. This is Die
Yes,
Hard
correct.
on
Yeah.
this
No,
is
it
Die Hard
is,
on a
yeah.
plane. You know.
Yeah, it's a trope at this point.
But I would give Alive 3 buckets.
That's
You know,
still
I'm not
pretty
saying
damn-
it's
I was gonna
terrible.
say,
It's
that's
a
still
zombie
pretty damn
movie.
high for you.
It's a zombie movie, and it was good, but I wouldn't go as high as you two would.
Fair enough.
That's all.
But I think in general, like, I rank things that I like higher than you do.
Yeah, you're pretty
like,
stingy with your buckets,
Yeah.
my friend.
Yeah,
like,
I tend to actually, now that I hear myself saying these things, like even something that I like it with a grain of salt.
yeah. Like, I feel like when I like something, even if
Really
you
like
and I both say we like it in equal amount, I'll still give
You're
you
still going a little
more
bit higher.
buckets than you would.
than what I would. Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just, I just gotta fix myself. This is something.
We ain't got time for that right now. We got other issues.
That's
going
another show.
on.
But hey, I'm gonna go on a totally different tact with our next movie because I'm just like blinking with heart symbols in my eyes after I watched.
I knew you would be.
See, I cannot believe that you have not seen this movie yet.
You know why? Because the next movie, that kid is you. That
Yeah.
kid is actually you, and that was the first thing I thought.
I need to know right now, Jim. Do you own a pair of zombie slippers?
No, I don't think they
What?
exist. I would.
or a zombie toothbrush.
A zombie toothbrush.
No.
Do zombies even have teeth?
Or
Well,
that
I guess
zombie,
they do. They eat
the
you.
zombie alarm clock was pretty good too.
There you go. So let's go to concession stand and get into it because all right, now I'm game. Let's
Okay.
go.
Remco Movie Land Drive-In Theater is straight ahead. Here it is now, Betty. Today's double feature. Have Gun Will Travel and Heckle and Jekyll. It looks terrific, Timmy. Try right in the park. Let me show you how it works. Switch on the projector, turn the film knob, and you'll see 6 exciting still features. Have Gun Will Travel and Heckle and Jekyll. Captain Kangaroo and Dinky Duck. Mighty Mouse and Farmer Alfalfa. Gollywog, clear, big pictures. This Remco Movie Land Drive-In Theater has everything. 6 complete features. Its own giant screen, projection booth, marquee that changes, ticket window, and 6 beautiful cars. Be the first in your neighborhood to own and operate a Remco Movie Land Drive-In Theater. Only $5.98 at your favorite toy store. Remember, every boy wants a Remco toy. And so do girls.
Okay, we're back and we're going to talk about Paranorman. So happy that this was picked for a co-feature this week
Yes.
from the Laika Studios. Now,
Laika, yes.
how many feature films
I knew
in
you were going to
Para-
throw that at me. I
Paranorman?
think they've only Missing Link was the last one that came out last year, which won a Golden Globe. I think there's only 5.
Right. So they did Coraline, Paranorman,
Coraline.
Box Trolls.
Kubo.
That's
Kubo.
what I was getting at. Was Coraline the first or
Yes,
was-
Coraline. This
Coraline
is
was
the
the
second one.
first.
Paranorman is the second movie. Missing Link, Box Trolls,
And Kubo.
Kubo,
Yeah.
and the 3 strings.
Yeah.
2 strings.
Right. So actually, my son, when he was pretty small, I actually have a photograph of him standing in front of the Paranorman like standee from the lobby. But I remember seeing the trailer for this. The original trailer had Donovan's Season of the Witch playing over it.
Oh.
And from the moment that I saw that trailer, I was like, I
We
need this
gotta
movie.
go.
Like, I need this
Yeah.
movie in my life. And I'm so shocked that Jim's never seen this.
I know.
No,
Well, you know,
no.
Laika's a weird. I mean, we all talk about Pixar and how game changing they were, but Laika, for those who don't know, it's all stop motion. It's all physical characters, and we'll talk on the back end of some of the tech stuff. But it's more art house. I mean, these characters, especially in this movie, are so non-Disney designed.
Definitely, yeah.
They
they're-
are so peculiar in quirky.
peculiar is a kind word. Some of the
I
characterizations are downright unattractive, you know,
Yes,
and
correct, yeah.
they're not afraid to go there.
No, and
Now-
and each movie has its own look and feel. It's not like you can look at a Disney movie and like, oh, this is Disney. You know, each Leica movie has its, and I think Box Trolls is probably the ugliest one out there. The characters are just not cuddly or likable in any way, shape, or form. But I find this studio so fascinating because they're just kind of dancing to their own beat. I mean, they're just doing their own thing. And that's why it made me so mad when Kubo did lose to Disney's Zootopia. Because Kubo, and again, all these movies are being released in 3D. I saw Kubo in 3D. This was available. It was shot in 3D.
This wasn't it the first animated feature shot in 3D? Did I read that somewhere?
Maybe. Yeah, because I don't think Nightmare Before Christmas was back-ended after its initial release.
Right.
Was 3D when 3D was really big on Blu-ray.
But the stop motion is so clean. Like, you know, I sat down and watched this with my son, and as soon as the Leica thing came up, he's like, oh, this is going to be stop motion. So the movie started, and I'm like, are you sure this is stop motion? Is this CGI? He's like, no, this is stop motion. He's
is
like,
stop
you know,
motion.
as the expert.
But my wife kept comparing it to Monster House, which is CG animated. But when you get into the artistic merits of this thing, it's unbelievable. I mean, there's a chase in the van, and the van is in the air, and things are flying everywhere. And from a technical aspect, you just have to sit back and marvel. And the one cool thing is at the end of each of these movies, after the credits, they usually have a little scene. It's like a played out, you know, fast motion of them putting together a little scene. You see behind the scenes, the cameras and the guys going up and moving the characters bit by bit. And you just realize like how time consuming this thing really is.
Yeah, and as you said, at the very end,
fluid.
At the very end of the credits, you do see the little armature that they made of Norman, and in fast speed, like it goes from nothing to an armature to the fully realized figure of Norman, and which then walks off of the table. Right. So I thought that was
and what you have to realize too, which is it's not like Nightmare Before Christmas, which they were really one of the first where they did 3D printing of the faces. And it's not claymation. It's not like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer where they're moving the mouth. It's like they have different sculpts, thousands of sculpts for each mouth movement on these characters, and the faces snap off and snap on, change their expression. And that's part of the thing, which was they just signed this deal with Intel to create a program, which they're referring to as rotoscoping, which we've talked about. That's not rotoscoping. Rotoscoping is old school Disney, where they would film like Cinderella, and she's dancing with the prince, and they would film a real person dancing, and then it would be rear projected on glass, and then the animators would trace over that. They even got into it. We talked about it with Madam on the Aristocats. That's why, you know, sometimes human movements are so realistic because all they're doing is they're filming this stuff and then they're tracing off. That's not rotoscoping, but apparently the software will help them remove the seam lines around the faces where the plastic face clicks on. Right now, that's all done by hand, frame by frame. So, but we're getting into the weeds on that. So sorry.
I was hoping that you would bring some expertise on this.
I love Leica, you know, it really is a boutique studio. And again, I just read that they laid off 56 people.
Do they have anything in the works coming out?
Right now, that there is another movie lined up, but there is no title. But they're only like 360 staff members in their office. I think they're in Oregon. So they laid off 56 people with the intention that they're going to bring them back at a later date. So they're just being furloughed. But still, you know, to me, it's like this is a lost art, and it's kind of making a comeback. And you want to see these because really, where else are these people going to go? You know, Disney just laid off 28,000 people. It's not like I can go across the street and be like, hey, heard you're hiring. Let's get into it. Let's get into the movie itself.
Okay. So we've got the character of Norman who can see dead people.
I see dead people
all around him, and nobody else believes him. It's his problem. So all the other kids at school, and what is he, 11, 12? I think they set up
maybe
in this.
at the most. But that's a beautiful, like when you first establish him. He's having a conversation. He's watching TV, and this is where I can see where Christina's like, this kid is Jim. He's glued to the television.
Now, can we
watching a zombie movie?
Let's point out that this zombie movie, they even have, even though he's watching it on TV or on VHS, so it wouldn't have this anyway. But the great feature presentation.
Yeah.
But it's. I think it's you and I recognize it immediately.
Yeah.
But
also, like that, just a little clip of that zombie movie is great. Like from the get-go, like you see the detail of the bite in the brain that's on the floor.
Yes.
And then the zombie's approaching the girl, and she's screaming, and she actually runs out of breath and looks at the camera.
Right. Yeah.
You're right,
and then
right.
screams again. Yeah. Yeah.
Because
It's
it's
funny
taken
stuff.
so long to get to her.
Right. I did read that they said it took a bit for them to actually be able to create that because they really wanted to invoke those old school camera angles and the goofiness of
and
so
you got that real 80s synth soundtrack going underneath.
Yeah, and you got the crackle, you got the VHS streaming scraggles.
But the great
or whatever.
thing about that is that music keeps coming back into the actual movie that you're watching. Whenever you see the zombie scenes, you hear that synth going on.
But this informs you right up front that this kid is completely invested in this in this world of zombies, and he's having a conversation with grandma who's sitting on the couch, and then you find out that she's dead because he goes and he has a conversation with the family. And he's like, well, grandma said, can you turn up the heat? And his dad, who's played by Jeff Garland, by the way, and this guy is just friggin' kills it no matter what he does. And he's just like, I told you once, I told you 1,000 times, grandma's dead. And then that's where you see he's going to school. And he's just saying hello to all these dead people who are just
on his way to school. Then you see somebody else's point of view and they can't see him.
Correct.
Like he does. So it just looks like he's talking to himself.
Yeah.
Speaking of point of view, that's actually one of the things I like about this movie, and I think that might have given you the impression that it is CG and not stop motion, is they use a lot of really interesting point of view angles in this movie. And one of the best ones from the start is when he's standing in between his parents in the kitchen.
Yes, and it's belly to belly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you sort of see that kid point of view of like adults talking literally around you.
Over him. Yeah. Yeah. No, there's the camera, and even later when he goes to Pendergast's house, it's the camera is basically on the ground. And you just see his bike, you see his feet, and then it pans around and you just get this huge reveal of this house. Stuff like that, which is it's very well done. It's impressive.
Yeah. And the setup from the get-go is that his family doesn't even believe him. So he doesn't even have anybody, and his mother is only kind of halfway in his corner because she doesn't believe him either, but she's still, his mom. So she's the only sympathetic character.
His room is nothing but zombie posters. Again, we talk about the zombie slippers. He's got the zombie. So he lives in this world. That's like me as a kid telling my parents Bigfoot's outside my window. Well, you're obsessed with him anyway, so I'm sure it was the garbage man and you just think it's Bigfoot.
So his father's on the verge of not letting him even watch this stuff anymore.
Right.
Because it's affecting him. And then he goes to school and then he's got freak written on his locker.
This brought back.
It was like PTSD, right? It's PTSD.
PTSD.
Yeah. And the saddest thing is that he's got like a spray bottle and a cloth in his locker because he knows
because every day he's had to deal with it.
So he just like cleans it
off.
off.
It's too bad back in 1986 that they didn't have magic erasers because that would have come in handy for me.
Yeah, but that's also where you're introduced to Neil, the little fat kid, who is also got
bullied and ostracized and everything else. So
and Alvin, we're introduced to Alvin, who is the bully, but he does redeem himself somewhat.
But we should actually rewind slightly because we should talk about the town.
Right.
So the town is called Blythe Hollow, and it's clearly modeled on Salem.
Yes.
Right. Yes.
But not like a cute colonial Salem, like the actual town. It's like a really run-down town where the industry.
It's like if Las Vegas and Salem met.
Because they're completely capitalizing. And so there's this whole backstory that it's the 300th anniversary of this witch who was,
right.
Yeah.
They like the Puritans killed this witch who threatened the town, and supposedly there's a curse that she made on these Puritans who condemned her, and the town has built up all this industry.
They're just hanging their hat on this thing.
Yeah.
Yes,
Every
yes.
store has got witch-related merchandise
Casinos
or witch
and what have
Yep.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know, have you guys ever been to Salem? Because
No.
we
No,
went
no.
about 15 years ago, and it's kind of like this.
Is
I mean,
it?
except that it's
But-
not run down like this. Salem like looks
No,
like
but
a
I'm sure
like little colonial town, but there's
merchandising
so
wise,
much
they are
like
just
just like everything is sort of based around the fact that the witch trials
This is-
were there.
yeah. Yeah, it's like
And-
Roswell.
And if you guys ever do go to Salem, there's a really wacky wax museum that you should go to.
Yeah, that might be outside my comfort zone. Wax museums are kind of creepy to begin with.
Speaking of wax museums, this is a totally different tact, but it makes me think of the one in Lake George,
Yeah,
Frankenstein's
up at
House
Lake
of
George.
Wax.
the
Is
one
that
that was
still
ab-
there?
It was
Is
above.
it still there?
It was above, like it was 2 floors, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they usually have a guy dressed as Frankenstein walking around outside.
We
Yeah.
were just in Lake George. I don't remember seeing it. But then again, that strip is pretty long, so. Huh.
But so Blythe Hollow has everything is sort of focused around this this event that happened in their past, and they've tried to like build up this industry around the fact that, you know, their ancestors killed a witch, and Norman and his schoolmates are cast in a play with a very intense
Yeah, I'm going to say they were probably forced to do this because there's no way that Elvin would ever be a part of the drama club.
Yeah, that kind of threw me as well. Oh, the bullies, they were the first ones to sign up for the school play.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
Yeah.
And Miss Hunter is the very intense drama teacher who's trying to get them to, you know, find the dramatic core of their characters.
And that was Alex Borstein who does the voice of Lois on Family Guy. But yeah, that teacher, that's when we talk about like these uncomfortable character designs where you're like, these are not cuddly
they're caricatures. Like clearly she's a caricature, right? Like her
But
head
to
is
the
small,
extreme,
like her body is big, and she's got like a splint on one hand, and her hand is like grotesquely swollen.
Yeah.
Like compared to the other.
Yeah. Like there's a lot of like you're like, what went into the thought behind this stuff?
Imagine how entertaining an elementary school play would be if all the kids read their lines like she was telling them to.
And that's one thing we have to talk about, which is it's one thing that Norman is seeing dead people, like talking to dead people, but then he starts to see these visions of almost like the fabric of reality kind of burning away. And at one point during the play, he gets transported back to during the witch trial. So there's much more going on with this kid, and you know, you already feel bad for him that people are making fun of him, that his parents don't believe him, and now he's experiencing something truly ridiculous. It's
right
and frightening. And I think like one of the things about his character is that he's sort of fundamentally kind, and you see that just in the way that he can't pass one of those ghosts on the street without greeting them. Like he has to acknowledge that they're there. And it's really important because this comes back at the end. Neil says something to him about how bullying is human nature, and how like if you were bigger and had like less brain cells, you too would be a bully. But I think that Norman would never be a bully because it's just fundamentally not.
And he actually uses that against Agatha as well. He tells her point blank, you know, you're just
a bully.
like them. You're a bully.
Yeah. And that's why it's one of the interesting things, like, because Neil makes this seemingly throwaway line about bullying, but it ends up playing into
it's an overriding
the
arc of the whole
theme of the film, because that's too is why the Puritans executed the witch in the first place, because they were scared, and because people who are scared
and this is the nice reveal of the movie. Let's talk about Neil for 1 second, because he has the best line in the entire movie when he is being bullied, and he says to Elvin, "Don't make me throw this hummus, it's spicy."
Oh yeah, that's when Norman's uncle
Prendergast,
is grabbing him and saying, "You need to understand."
That's right. Yes.
You know, you need to do this thing. You have to get the book. You have.
That's the overriding thing too, which is he knows this. So we're introduced to this grisly character played by John Goodman, who we're told is his uncle, but no one seems to know who he actually is, Prendergast.
Well, yeah, he's ostracized from the family.
Right.
But yet he happens to have the same last name as the witch. So this is a
Eggs,
reveal that Norman is somehow related to Agatha, which is never really spoken. You just have to put those pieces together for yourself.
Correct. And I think he does realize that.
Well, especially at the end when you see Agatha and she looks like Norman.
She looks like him with the ears and the whole bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So going back to that play, the whole town bases their existence on this witch, Agatha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's the tourism and anything else is based on this witch, yet still they refuse to believe Norman. They don't buy into his stories at all. And he's starting to see this. And then he finds out that his uncle, who dies almost immediately after he's introduced.
Yeah. So he tells him he's got to go get the book. So
he's been placating the ghost of Agatha all these years with this book. He's been reading her a story.
Yeah, bedtime
story.
Yeah. Which takes a long time for him, for Norman to cut. Well, even as a viewer to understand, because they play up the witch that, there's a big statue in the middle of town and it's an evil looking Wizard of Oz witch, the Puritans are the good guys and the witch is the bad guy. And this is how it is. And this is how we promote it and play it.
Right. And even Salma says at one point during the play, because she's forced to play the witch, she says, how come the witch always is like hideously ugly with a hooked nose? Like, how come it's this stereotype?
Yep.
But Agatha herself buys into that because the way that she appears at the end is exactly like that.
Listen, if I was a witch, I'd look like that to scare people.
But that's part of what Norman is saying is that you're just as bad as these bullies.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So
the uncle comes to Norman, and in another funny scene in the school bathroom where Alvin is in the next stall and he hears all this noise going on in Norman's stall.
Where Alvin, by the way, cannot spell his own name because he has it.
Oh my God,
he's got it crossed out multiple
times.
So the uncle tells him that Norman has to go to his house, get the book. And that's why he's been seeing these visions. Is that
I've got
Agatha
the book.
is
Where
going
is
to wake
it?
up.
He goes, not me, the ghost, me, the one that's laying in my house. And I may be smelling funny at this point, but go get the book. And so that's Alvin follows him, but that's a great scene because it's full on slapstick where he's trying to get this book from the dead man's hands. The corpse is rolling over on him, the tongue's coming out. It was so very well done. Now
somehow, and it manages to do it brilliantly, this is a kid's movie for all intents and purposes, and it makes the zombie genre kid friendly without losing the creepy factor. It manages to walk that line very well. And this scene is very indicative of that when Norman goes to the house and he's struggling with the corpse and then the tongue comes out and to get the book. And, it's a dead body that he's tussling with that ends up on top of him, but it doesn't seem as grim as it should be,
Maybe because he's a fresh dead body.
But it still just seems, I feel like you have so much sympathy for Norman. It's this horribly unfair thing to ask a kid to do. It's even a horribly unfair thing to ask a kid to have to deal with the witch's curse and
which is why everybody hates this uncle, I'm sure. That's probably not the only thing that you can accuse him of.
But when they come out of the grave is pretty well done.
Yeah.
The 7 Puritans.
You misunderstand the Puritans from the get-go, from when they
That's the point. I think that's the point. Because again, you're always led to believe the zombies are the bad guys.
Now here's where, talking about some of these voice actors, I was convinced until the end credits that Courtney was played by Ashley Tisdale from
from
Phineas and Ferb. I'm like, that's Candace. That is Candace. And no, Anna Kendrick.
Actually, all the voices in this are great.
Jeff Garland, you can't mistake that guy's voice, but he's just got that gravel, and he doesn't get enough screen time. There's one point where he's screaming. And the wife's like, you're going to give yourself a heart attack, and then what are you going to do? He's like, I'm going to come back, and I'm going to haunt Norman.
And then he might listen to me.
He
might listen to me.
Right, correct. He won't listen to his parents, but he'll listen to dead people.
The car chase scene when the motorcycle cop is chasing them and they've got the zombie in the back and then the arm is poking everybody. And
yeah, he went full on like Three Stooges, eye poke.
Yeah.
But again, that's the brilliance, you know, this car chase scene. You know, we bring in Sheriff Hooper, who is played by Tempest Bledsoe.
Mhm.
And it's
Rudy,
just
right? Was that Rudy?
Yeah,
No,
from
that was-
from the Huxtables. Yeah, we won't even invoke his name. Yes, yeah. We did talk about the scene where Neil is just as lonely and desperate for a friend as Norman is, and there's a scene where he brings him home, and this is where we're introduced to Mitch, Neil's older brother. But there's a scene where he's like, you know, my dog. We buried him in the backyard. Can you see him? And Neil's playing catch with his dead dog. And it's just so like heartwarming. And then there's a scene where he says, all right, now you throw it. And you can tell that Norman's never thrown a ball in his life. He has no skills whatsoever. And he throws the stick, it bounces off, hits Neil in the face, and he catches it. And he just says, I fetched it. And we laughed way too hard at this joke. But it was just so heartwarming between these two characters that they had this kind of bonding moment. I mean, Neil never questions Norman's ability to see dead people. He just accepts it for what it is.
But because Neil desperately wants friend, even more so than Norman does.
Yeah.
Needs this friendship and sees that Norman.
Yeah. And even because Mitch is like, you brought that, the kid, he goes, don't you screw this up for me.
Yeah, even if Norman doesn't see it, Neil is going to make him see it, that he needs a friend as well.
Yes, correct.
And of course, the scene where Neil says, you know, when he's trying to kiss his dead dog, and it turns out he's like, that's not his face.
That's not,
that's
not his face. Because the dog was like in half. It was two different pieces of dog.
And I love the scene when he's standing outside, like Michael Myers, even though he's wearing Jason's hockey mask.
Yes.
And Norman's phone rings, and it's the theme
Friday
from
13th.
Halloween.
Right. Yep.
As a matter of fact, the relationship between these two reminded me a lot of Jojo Rabbit. That dynamic.
Yeah. Physically, physically, they also have the same attributes. Yeah.
But Neil just had that same sweetness about him as well.
Yes.
So we get into the zombies now actually coming into contact with the townsfolk.
And they are horrified of the town, which I thought was
which
brilliant.
is so funny. Even before it gets to the point where you realize that the zombies aren't quite what they seem. Just the fact that they obviously do not belong in modern times and they do not understand what they're seeing, I thought was great. That aspect of it.
Yeah.
And then they capitalize on that confusion with the townspeople attacking the zombies.
Yeah, like getting completely out of control. Like that mob mentality, like clicks in.
Yeah, correct.
Super fast, and then the whole town just gets insane. Especially that one little kid in the crowd who seems to relish.
With the kid with the page boy haircut.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who
even
seems
Mrs. Hensher. Yeah, she's
relish the destruction.
She's like, let loose the dogs of war. And they're all like looking at her. And she goes, let's go find her.
Right. It's like, now's not the time to be quoting Julius Caesar.
Right. Because apparently they didn't know what you were talking about.
So, and at the same time, Norman and the rest of the gang are in the town hall trying to figure out where Agatha is buried.
Oh my
They're
gosh.
struggling with the zombies, you know, and it turns out that it's like a big misunderstanding. It's like a Three's Company episode going on in the town hall. They realize after years of being undead what their mistake was and why they are in the situation that they're in. So,
and they're desperately trying to get to Norman, not to hurt him, because he's the only person who can understand him.
Yeah.
Understand them. So everyone else just hears rah, rah, rah,
right.
Right.
But he hears words. So they're just trying to get to him so that they can tell their side of the story and get Norman to help them.
Yeah.
But I love that scene when they first go into the town hall, because everyone's being a pain. Like, no one's actually helping Norman. And he is like, if I'd known there'd be so much reading, I would have brought a different group of people.
Because you realize pretty quickly they're all ineffective.
Because he has Alvin, who can't spell his own name. He has his sister Courtney, who's only concerned with trying to play up to Mitch, who's, you know, she obviously thinks is good looking, and Neil, who would like to help, but he seems like he's getting distracted.
One book at a time. I finished it. There's like a million books.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he still doesn't understand, you know, Prendergast has told him he needs to read this book, but it's a children's storybook.
Mhm.
So he doesn't grasp.
So he thinks he's got the wrong book. He's like,
Right.
well, how is this going to help?
Right. So he's constantly questioning. So they do find out from the zombies where she's buried. And that's hysterical, where he ends up having his parents drive them, and you have the lead zombie in the middle of the car, in comedic effect that
Right.
you know,
Being
the
yelled
sister,
at because they're all fighting with each other, and
Right.
it's like the
He's, "Oh
father's
my
got to
God,
yell at the zombie
Right.
and then
Yeah, and he's all hunched up in the truck, in the car. Yeah.
And there's one of the genuinely scary moments in the movie when Norman first goes to confront Aggie, and he's like, you need to go back to sleep, and she goes, I don't want to go to sleep, and you can't make me.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and you're like,
Yeah.
whoa.
he's telling her, oh, I'm just like you, you know, I'm also ostracized. But she's like, are you a girl? You're
Right.
a boy. You're not like me at all. And
Right. And she's like, and you're alive.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Like, you're not dead, so you're not like me.
And
But-
and Aggie, this is another case of like just the amazing work of these the animators with the stop motion, the character of the way that she's rendered when she's glowing and everything else. I'm like, this looks so nice. You know, how can this be
Yeah.
stop motion? This is probably, and this is saying something. This is like the most impressive Laika movie that I've seen in terms of the animation, and they're all amazing. Right before it's just those two, the townsfolk, you can hear them saying, well, he's the cause of this.
Right.
And it's almost like starting all over again. Like they're gonna
Just
tie
to
him up.
Take him. Yeah.
He has to talk her down. He has to talk her off the ledge, almost literally. And she attacks him pretty ruthlessly throughout this segment as well.
Right. But he stands his ground. you
And
know?
then she becomes her human self again, which is it was so emotional at the end.
I'm all getting goosebumps. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she just you know, she puts her head on his
And
shoulder.
the fact, well, yeah, when they sit down and she's like, I want my mommy, and
Yeah.
he's like, just go to sleep and then you can see your mother again. And then
Because she's obviously very aware of what they've been doing to her, which is
Yeah.
subduing her by, you know, reading
and she
bedtime
completely
stories.
it's not like she's repressed this. She has every memory of what's happened to her.
Right.
And that's why
Yeah.
she's so angry. And I'm going to bring up my theory again. The scene where Aggie puts her head on his shoulder, and that alone is crippling emotionally to
Yeah.
watch. But
Yeah.
suddenly, boom, they hit you with the bright white light. And you're like, physically-
You're right, because it was like pitch black. It was like the
physically,
sun was just
your
coming
eyes
up.
start to water. And I'm like, they
Yeah.
have to be, they know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing when they do this.
Oh, I was crying
actually
like
refer
5
to it as
minutes
the Baker
before
effect.
that. So
Yeah, no, I was
Yeah.
saying they don't need that. They don't need that
Right,
whitewash to get you going. They absolutely don't. But anyway, so Norman saves the day at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is kind of like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer in the sense that, you know, he's got an ability everybody makes fun of, but when
Yeah.
the town's in danger, it's like, oh, you better step up, dude.
Yeah.
Although I think he knew what he needed to do before the townsfolks did, but
And it,
Yeah,
it
this
is
is-
funny at the end because Alvin is trying now to use his relationship, quote unquote, with
yeah,
Norman.
we're friends. We hang out. Yeah.
Like,
we,
oh yeah,
we
like
got a
you know,
couple
I've known
classes
him.
together.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I've known him for a long time.
And
you
then
know,
you talk
'cause-
about Courtney, you know, all over Mitch the whole time, and he's like, oh, you're really gonna like my boyfriend, and you're like, it was just a great throwaway line.
Which, you know what's funny is that reading that, there was some, obviously, there's always going to
Oh,
be that group of people that
controversy.
takes that.
Yeah. How dare
that-
you make this character gay?
Yeah, how dare you? I was reading some commentary about it, how they just kind of throw that in at the end, and you can imagine the conversations on the ride home
Right.
between the kids and the parents. Like now they're forced to actually explain
You
that.
think he was joking? Does he really have a boyfriend?
No, but it's very much like, remember Teen Titans Go
Teen
to the
Titans. I was
Movies,
just gonna bring up Teen Titans. Hey
where
kids,
Robin at the
ask your
very end,
parents.
hey kids, ask your parents where babies come from, and then boom.
It gets cut credits. Yeah.
Well, it's funny that you say that because, like I said, I took Henry to see this, and he was like 6 when this came out, and he never mentioned it to me.
Yeah, no,
So,
but it's
like,
a throwaway line. It's and it literally is at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And if you catch it, you catch it. If you don't, it doesn't change anything.
I'm just saying, like these gay panic people, like need to get a hold of themselves because honestly, half the time kids don't even notice.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, unless you make a big. I can't believe they said it. What does it mean, Mom?
Right.
What does it mean? Why are you so
But
upset?
actually, what I remember is that Henry was quite scared at the end because Agatha's very intense. You know, he was
yeah,
lit.
yeah.
and he climbed in my lap during the movie
Yeah.
because he was like, this is getting like too scary, but
Yeah. Hang in there, kid.
yeah. And
Yeah.
even now he's like, this movie really scared me when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's amazing what, we've talked about this, my kids, like little scenes that as a parent or adult, you don't even think twice about, but it just
but
sticks
it
with them.
sears into
hits
your
them.
kids' heads, and it's the same with us. I'm sure our parents didn't think twice about some things that we were watching, yet scarred emotionally for life.
Yep.
Well, Agatha, I mean, it's very intense when you first see her, and she is like mean and scary,
Right.
and she's trying to kill Norman.
Yeah.
Well, you need to, because you can't shirk away from at the conclusion of a movie like this that's building up, the scary stuff and the dread, and they're building up this confrontation. She has to be threatening. And so I don't think they go overboard with it. I think it's just enough.
But for the longest time, you think it's the zombies you have to worry about, and it's really not. So, and again, she's been portraying herself as this monstrous witch in the sky with the clouds. And I think it's even scary when she's revealed as just this little 12-year-old girl, and especially once Norman, he confronts him. He's like, she was just a child.
That's why she's so scary, because a child doesn't have the reasoning power
just that these
quote unquote adults,
took me out. Yep. And now you're going to pay for it. It is very well done.
When we were talking before about Neil saying to Norman, well, if you were bigger and were stupid, then you'd be a bully too. And then he says it's survival of the thickest. And when they're in the car at one point and they're listening to the radio, and there's the newscaster starts off all calm, officials are urging people to panic and run. She's
This one is great. Like, this has been, for me, like, I saw the trailer when I was at a movie, like I said, because it had this Donovan playing over the trailer. And it was just the scene of, initially, it was just like Norman getting out of bed, putting his feet in his zombie slippers and brushing his teeth. And then you saw like a few clips of other things that happened in the movie, and I was like, I have to see that movie. And then we went to see it in the theater. As soon as it came out on video, we bought the DVD. Like, we watch it every year in October.
Nice.
Like, this is like an annual family tradition. So
there you go. Yeah. You talk about some of the quotes when Alvin and Norman are first exposed to the zombies coming out of the ground. And they're running. Elvin's like, are they going to eat our brains? And Norman's like, I think you're okay. No, definitely worthy of multiple viewings.
It is.
So, it looked really impressive on Blu-ray, I will say.
Yes, I managed to get the Blu-ray as well.
I would have liked to have
really
watched it in 3D, but I did not. And this, movies like this just lend themselves.
Definitely.
Especially if it's shot native as 3D.
Right. Released, as we said, in 2012, August of 2012. It had a $60 million budget, and it made $107 million globally. So it was a modest hit for Laika. No sequel, unfortunately.
No, I like that, though. I mean, I think we actually kind of, once Pixar was sucked up by Disney, then they went down that road where they just remined half that stuff. Do we need a Cars 2, Cars 3? It's move on to something else.
Right. But imagine like a Scooby series with Norman and Neil.
And these characters were very much a Scooby gang by the end. You even get that when they're in front of the courthouse and the 4 or 5 of them are standing there, and you're just kind of like, I could see multiple movies.
Even the show, Netflix show. But then again, it's years have passed, and the kids wouldn't be the same actors, and so maybe we should just keep the magic in this particular bottle.
There you go. Right. Yeah. Yep. Very well done. I liked it. Loved it.
All right. So I'm gonna give my 4 buckets on this one.
I'm going 4 1/4.
So, and of course I'm going even higher because we watch this every year.
There you go.
And I'm gonna say actually it's I'm gonna say 4.5, and my son said 5.
Nice.
So, but he's super
Nice.
generous with the bucket.
Yes.
I know.
Yes.
He throws out those buckets
Yeah,
just like
he's-
he's dealing a deck of cards.
like
bucket,
bucket maestro over there.
bucket.
There's a bucket. He's like Oprah buckets.
Yeah.
You get
By
a
the-
bucket.
You get
a
5 buckets.
bucket.
You get 5 buckets.
By the way, he gave 6 to Alive. He just violated the rules
Again,
altogether.
Illegal. You got to call the TMI police on that.
Very cool.
Yeah. So a very nice start to the Halloween season.
That-
Well, we're getting into crazy territory next week.
Yeah, well, we'll
talk
worry about
that
next week.
after the
Well, one of them was
confessional.
my pick, so I know what I'm getting in for at least that one.
Yeah, surprising, Jeff. Surprising. But we get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, we do get ahead of ourselves.
This week's confessional.
Confessionals.
It's going to be scary confessionals. We're going to try to come up with scary confessionals for the next few weeks. And this one was mine just because I watch so much TV, and local TV especially, the WOR in the New York City, New Jersey, Connecticut area, Channel 9, Channel 11, WPIX, Channel 5, WNEW. We used to see a lot of movie ads on these channels specifically, more so even than on the big networks, and horror movies especially. You'd see commercials for on these local channels. And so these would come in usually during reruns of Three's Company or whatever they would show in, after school between probably 5 and 7 at night. So this is where they would get me because all these horrific horror trailers would run on TV and I would not be prepared for them. After just seeing Jack Tripper stumble over the Regal Beagle. So the question is, if you caught anything on TV, and I was thinking specifically of movie trailers or even TV trailers that made an impression on you that really scared you as a kid, something that you weren't prepared for, that you just happened to see on TV. And the one that sticks out most for me was a trailer, a TV commercial for this movie called Silent Scream. Now, I went back and looked at this, and it was released at the end of 1980. So I would have been probably 9 years old. And the movie itself, and you wouldn't be able to tell this from the TV commercial, but the movie itself is that a bunch of college students move in an old house, and they all have different rooms, and the landlady lives in the house with them. And apparently something else lives in the house with them as well. And it's a slasher movie from that early 80s, late 70s time period. And the commercial, I remember, had one of these college students investigating a hidden stairway that was they're walking upstairs and it's all cobwebs and somebody is under the stairs reaching for their feet. And that's the one image that I remember from the commercial. And then at the end it said Silent Scream, and then there's a freeze frame of somebody screaming with no noise. And for some reason, that stuck with me for all these many years. And I actually saw the movie probably 5 years ago, and it was one of the lamest horror movies.
But if you had seen it as a kid,
But when I saw that scene when I saw the scene of that girl walking up the stairs, it just brought it all. Like that's the scene that I remember. That was what inspired me to ask this question: is Silent Scream.
Interesting. Christina, do you have anything?
Well, I mean, I've really, really struggled with this because I'm sure the stuff scared me that I saw on TV, but I just don't recall it. And the closest I can get to that is, I was just thinking about this as Jim was talking. I want to say there used to be a video store in the 9 Mall, and like when video stores first started opening. And that was the one that we used to go to initially. And they had a standee in the store of Freddy Krueger. And I couldn't even walk past it. Because I was young when Nightmare on Elm Street came out. I was 10. So, and of course, Freddy Krueger kills a girl named Tina. And I was very scared of that movie.
And rightfully so.
And because I remember I watched it at a sleepover at my friend Jessica's house, and she had an older sister who went to the store and rented that and The Last American Virgin.
Oh my!
which were both rated R movies.
Her name was also Tina, by the way.
And we should not have been watching those movies at
No,
the
you shouldn't
age
have.
we
You
were
shouldn't
watching
have.
them.
That's what sleepovers are for, right?
And that's what older siblings are for.
That's true. That's true.
And-
Don't hook me up with beer. Go get me a scary movie.
Right. And so I remember that there was like this big standee of Freddy Krueger, and it was near the front of the store, and I had to walk past it every time we went in the video store to rent a movie, and I was scared to walk past it. That's the only thing I can think of offhand.
We're all in therapy right now. Yeah, I had a hard time as well. I don't necessarily remember a lot of scary trailers, movies that I remember seeing, but when Jim was talking, it did spark my memory a little bit. And again, I don't know if this is I saw the trailer or if it was in the movie itself, but I think it might have been. It scared me, but it scared me enough that I still wanted to go see it, and I begged my dad to take me to go see In Search of Bigfoot. Now, this was Leonard Nimoy did the In Search of series, but they released 2 movies that I remember, In Search of Noah's Ark and In Search of Bigfoot, both which my father took me to the theater to go see at a very young age.
Feature length In Search ofs?
Yeah, basically. It probably was like 2 episodes put together, you know?
Okay.
It wasn't like I watched the show religiously, but specifically, and especially because, you know, in 67, when the Patterson Gimlin video of, you know, the famous shot of Bigfoot, you know, just cemented that in my head. But In Search of Bigfoot, they would reenact like these encounters. And there was just one where, you know, somebody was chasing him, and they get into like, I don't want to say it's like a cornfield, but it was like a wall of weeds, and they peel back and he's just standing there. But it's the music that sells it, that just yeah. In the Legend of Boggy Creek, the same thing, the scene where the guy's on the toilet and the arm comes through the window. But we're gonna go down. This is not movie related, but it traumatized me to this point where I get queasy even thinking about it. My grandfather used to take my brother and I to the county fair, Chemung County Fair. And he would give us a couple bucks, and he'd sit at the beer tent, and we would run around, you know, whatever for the entire day. There were 2 billboards. They were PSAs for drunk driving. And it was just a cartoon car with a girl. Her head was through the windshield, and she had blood around her, and I couldn't stop looking at it, but I almost passed out looking at this. This thing just like freaked me. It was so disturbing. And again, it was just a cartoon. It wasn't a real photo, but it was, and I remember, I think maybe the second one was she was like, you know, smashed into a tree or something. And again, it was just so like gut wrenching. I couldn't look away from it, but it was just horrifying for me as a kid. So that may be in the TMI department, but that scared me probably worse than any movie trailer I ever saw in my life. So.
And you bringing up Bigfoot just reminded me there was another commercial for a movie called Sasquatch that also
which I think came out in
79.
79
that came out.
Yeah. No, we're talking about Bigfoot was the one that came out in 70.
And I've seen this movie as well, and the trailer was so much better than the movie itself. It was like it's like a quasi like fake documentary kind of a thing where a bunch of guys go into the forest looking for Bigfoot, and they're documenting themselves. And at the very end, they are living in a cabin, and they go out during the day and they try to look for evidence. And a family of Bigfoots, like a number of Bigfoots, come and attack the cabin.
Are they big feet?
Big feet, yes. And so that footage of the big feet attacking the cabin.
I don't remember that.
It's in the Sasquatch, and there was a like an animation, not a moving animation, but like a painting of the outline of Sasquatch, like with the moon behind him, and that was like the logo of the movie. And that's what they showed in the commercial, and that was also very scary.
That was enough. That was enough for you?
Yes, it was.
All right. I think we scared each other enough this week, because next week is going to be even scarier.
It's going to be scarier.
What are you guys doing to me here?
We have a couple of classics next week. You can't go wrong with either of these picks.
True.
That's true. Yes. So what are these movies?
So we're doing a Don Coscarelli double feature next week with Phantasm, chosen by Jeff Chandler.
Speaking of 1979, right? That came out in 79? Am I correct?
Yes, it did.
Okay, there you go.
and Bubba Hotep, chosen by me.
Yes.
And that's a much more current.
Yes. Now, while it may seem that I am shut out of this episode, I would agree with both choices. So bring them on.
Yeah. And you question my choice, but Phantasm was something I think I watched quite a few times on HBO at my grandfather's house.
So it wasn't scary to you because you watched
No, it was still
enough
scary.
times, or
I don't know, because it might scare me again. The tall man was creepy as hell.
No, Phantasm was like, this may be a conversation best spoken next week, but Phantasm was like one of the most extreme horror movies that I saw as a kid. Just in its bizarre nature.
It's
kind of
got
leaves
great
a mark.
visuals. It's got memorable characters. Yeah, and it is weird. It goes in some pretty bizarre. And again, I haven't not seen this in years, and I've never watched any of the sequels. I think there's like 4 or 5 of them, right?
Yeah, I've
There's
only seen
quite
the
a lot.
second.
Yeah.
The second. I think I've only
No.
seen the first. and
That
the
first
second.
one just set the standard. But yeah, I never went down that road. Before we sign out, I do want to. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that today, October 4th, is the 40th anniversary of Thundar the Barbarian, premiered October 4th, 1980.
wow.
Which I just mentioned last week's episode, and I came across it, and I'm like, oh, I got to at least give Thundar a shout out. Any Thundar the Barbarian fans out there? So there you go. That's an episode.
Our first in October, so thank you for listening.
Yeah, and we'll be back with more scary stuff.
Stick with us.
I'll stick with you until you get too scary. Candyman's coming up. I'm not going to deal with that.
Yeah, talk about stick with you.
Oh my
Fine,
gosh,
listen.
I'm anticipating a week of hook puns.
All right, kids, thanks for listening. Stay safe out there.
Yes, please.
Watch
Bye.
out for boogeymen. Bye.
Bye.
Hello, everybody. If you liked the podcast you just heard, then please follow TMI on all of our social media outlets. First and foremost, email us at tmipodcast2018@gmail.com. That is tmipodcast2018@gmail.com.
And you can follow us on Twitter at TMI_podcast2018. Stop over, say hi, give us a compliment. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Make sure you follow us on Instagram as well, which is also TMI_podcast2018.
And of course, we are on Facebook, facebook.com/TMI Podcast 2018. And it should be noted, we also have a community page, so join the forum.
And if you like to watch YouTube, you can see us at TMI Podcast 2018, all one word. Look for the popcorn bucket.
Popcorn bucket. Or you could just go to our website, which has every link there, TMIConfessionalspodcast.com. And we'll see you at the concession stand.
We'll save some popcorn for you.